Sometimes when we go in to set reference using the Fluke Networks CertiFiber Pro, things go perfect. Other times, not so well. So in class last week, I was showing everyone how to set reference, and we stumbled a few times. So in this video, we're going to go through how to use the Fluke Networks CertiFiber Pro to set a multi-mode reference. And I'll show you some of the things that can go wrong when we go in and set that reference. So I hope you enjoy the video and that you get some good information out of it. So in this section, we're going to look at how to set a duplex reference. So we're going to do a one jumper reference, and we are going to set it on two fibers. Now, before we go in and we set reference, we need to make sure that we have allowed our light sources to stabilize. So what I mean by that is we need to make sure that we've allowed them to warm up, because as those light sources warm up, the power output will increase. Now, the CertiFiber Pro has an operating range of between negative 18 degrees Celsius and 45 degrees Celsius. So we can use it in an environment that falls into that range. We always want to make sure that we have our main and our remote powered on for at least 5 minutes before we go in and set reference. We want to allow extra time if the temperature change is significant between where it was stored and where we're using it. As the source warms up, the power output will increase. So if we set reference too soon, what's going to happen is as we start testing, we will start getting better and better test results and possibly even negative test results. This is because our power output is increasing, and it's no longer at that same level it was at when we set reference. So we'll take a look at things that we can do to verify that reference has been set properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, and I am going to come into my tests, and I am going to add, this is on the Versiv on my bench. So I'm going to come in here and add our smart remote test back in. I'll select our custom test limit we created. We're doing a one jumper reference. Our connector type is going to be SC. So I'll hit save. I'll say use selected. So what I've done is I've changed over from my fiber inspection test over to my smart remote test. Now, I am going to set reference. So if you're using your Versiv, I highly recommend you following along with me. If you're using one of the Versivs here in the training lab remotely, set reference button's not going to be there because there's no module in it. So I'm going to walk through. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be changing the screen around so that it gives you the ability to zoom in on the video. Within Zoom, you can move the bar back and forth and make the video bigger or smaller so you can see what I'm doing over here when I'm setting this up. So I'm going to come in here and hit set reference. This is going to bring up the set reference wizard. I'm going to hit run wizard. It's going to tell me to take my encircled flux test reference cords and connect those to the output ports of my main and my remote. Now, before I go in and set that up, we're going to come over here. Let me switch cameras. We'll move up just a little bit. I like to go in and take the dust caps off of the output and the meter ports and tuck those underneath the tester. That lifts it up off the bench just a little bit. I'm going to do that on both the main and the remote. Next, I'm going to grab my first encircled flux test reference cord. So that's going to be the cord that has that puck in it right there. we're going to lay that out. Now it's very important that when we're going in and setting reference, that we ensure that there are no coils in our cords. And this is really important with single mode. If we have coils in the cord, this can increase the amount of loss and end up giving us negative test results when we go in and start doing our testing. Now, I've put my 2.5 millimeter tip on the end of my camera. I'm going to come in here and hit my secret button. Now watch what happens on my set reference screen when I do that. It takes me into Fiber Inspector. I'm going to remove the dust cap from the end of my fiber. I'm going to put this on the end. I'm going to inspect that. I do not clean it first. I inspect it first. So right here I see that looks clean. So I attach that to the output port of the main. I'm going to inspect the other end. Yeah, that looks okay. Let me grab my 2.5 millimeter click cleaner here. Let's give that a little click. I'll come in here and take a look. Oh, see, now we got something on there. Now let me show you a trick. I am rotating the camera, and see how that thing on there doesn't rotate? That's because that's in the tip, not on the end face of the fiber. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a cleaning swab here. I just managed to zip that case closed. So we're going to come over here. I'm going to grab a 2.5 millimeter cleaning swab. And I'm going to clean that tip, the inspection tip out. Okay. I'm going to put it back on the camera. We're going to inspect that fiber again. See how that's gone? And I didn't clean the fiber. That's because that little hair or something was inside the inspection tip. That looks good. So now I'm going to plug that into the meter port of the remote. I'm going to grab my other encircled flux test reference cord. I'm going to inspect the end with the red boot. Red always goes toward the light source. That looks good. I'm going to plug that into the output port of the remote. I'll inspect the other end. Let's see if we can get that a little bit cleaner. I think this one has a little something in the face of it. Okay, that's as good as we're going to get that one, so I'm going to plug that one into the meter port on the main. And we hear the chirp. That lets me know that the main and the remote are connected together. Now this is the key part right here. When I want to get back into my wizard, I hit the back button right here. Do not hit save, don't hit home, hit the back button. So now that takes me back here. I go next. I've got that all connected up just like that. I hit set reference. And I'm going to come over here and view reference. Okay, so we've connected our fibers up just like we've seen. We're coming right out of the remote into the main, right out of the main, right into the remote. We avoid coils in our cords. We hit set reference, and now we view our reference. So right here we see we did a one jumper reference, shows us our date and our time, shows me that my loss at 850 nanometers from the remote to the main was 2501, 2392 from the main to the remote. How is that? Is that where we want it? Well, right here we say as a guide that what we're looking for is for 50 micron fiber. we're looking for a value of 23.5 to 25. Hey, we're right there. 62.5, negative 18.5 to negative 20 decibel meters. 9 micron, single mode, we're looking for negative 2.5 to 4 dB, negative 4 decibel meters. Now, if we're within this range, it is not a guarantee everything is good. But if we're outside this range, that can indicate that our ports may be dirty on our test equipment, that our test reference cords may be bad. But right here, we're at 2501. I'm going to call that close enough today to say that right there, we're within the range we want to be in. Now, if you forget those numbers, you can click on the question mark right here, and we get some ranges. These ranges aren't as tight as the ones that we would like you using. So in this case, it says negative 19.4 to negative 26. I really would like to see that 23 to 25. That's the ideal range. I'm going to go back. Now I'm going to hit next. Tells me to disconnect those fibers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here to my bag of fiber stuff. And I'm going to grab a bulkhead adapter. So right here, I've got a SC duplex bulkhead adapter. I like to keep the caps on these on the adapters just to help keep dust out of there. I'm going to disconnect the fiber from the meter port on the main. I'm going to plug that into the remote side of the bulkhead adapter. I'm going to disconnect my fiber from the remote and plug it into the main side. Now, as an important note, once I have set reference, which I have, I do not disconnect the output fibers. If I disconnect the output fibers, my reference is no good anymore. I grab my first additional test reference cord. Now, just to help keep everything straight, red always goes toward the light, black goes toward the meter. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to hit my secret button. I'm going to inspect my fiber. That looks like it's got something on it. So I'm going to come in here, give it a clean. That looks good. So I'm going to plug that into the main side of my bulkhead adapter. I'm going to inspect the other end. That could be cleaner. I'm going to plug that into the meter port on the main. I'll grab my remaining additional test reference cord here. It's going to be on my remote side. I'll inspect the end with the black boot. That looks good. I'll connect that to the bulkhead adapter connector, and I'll inspect the last connection. Now, notice on this one, we've got a little something on there. When I rotate the camera, see how it rotates? I know that that is on the end face, not in the camera. I'll inspect that. Looks good. I'll plug that into the remote. We hear the chirp. We know that everything is all plumbed up correctly. So I hit back. I come in here. I hit next. says connect up the additional test reference cords. I've done that. Connect the cords together, and then I do my TRC verification. This is what we're missing if we do a two-jumper reference, is we are measuring what the loss is across this connection right here. If we do a one-jumper reference, we're measuring the loss across that connection right there. So I do TRC verification. Oh no. So in this case, we have one connection that is beautiful. The connection going from the remote to the main, 0 dB of loss. Wow, that is fantastic. But the one going from the main to the remote, we see 0.28 dB. Now, what number are we looking for here? We're looking for 0.15. So we've exceeded that right there. So what I want to do is I want to take a look at that connection. So that's going to be the connector with the black boot coming from the main. So let's go over here. I'm going to grab my fibers. It's going to be this one right here. Now, anytime I inspect and clean a fiber, I always do both sides, because if one side's dirty, the odds are the other side's dirty as well. So I'm going to hit my secret button. We're going to take a look at that fiber. Yeah, that looks pretty good right there. So before I push it in all the way, I'm going to unplug the other side. Oh. Looks like we could have something in there. Although it looks like there's something on the camera too. Yeah, that's on the camera. Let's see. Well, that looks good, although we see a little dot right there at the edge of the cladding. So let's all right. And we're going to check the port that plugs into the meter as well. That looks good. So I'm going to hit back. I'm going to re-verify. Nope. All right. So something has gone haywire here. Notice that we're at negative 0.03 dB. So now we're starting to see negative loss on the other one. So this means I need to go back and reset my reference. So hang on. Let's do this. We're going to come in here. We're going to unhook this fiber. We're going to hook this fiber up here. We're going to unhook this fiber. We're going to hook this fiber up here. We're going to go back to the home screen. I'm going to do a set reference. We're going to set reference. Okay. Now you go back. Next. So I'm going to disconnect these fibers. Plug these back into my bulkhead connector. Do my TRC verification. Now the one that was working okay isn't. So let's inspect that. Well, that looks good. Wow, it's really going to fight me today. We're getting closer. We're going to try one other thing here. We're going to switch bulkhead adapters. I have run into cases with the bulkhead adapters before where the alignment gets off over time. There we go. So in that case, this bulkhead adapter, maybe time for that thing to go. So you notice that all I did in that case was switch out the bulkhead adapter, and now we get a passing result. So what we're looking for here is a value of less than or equal to 0.15 dB. So if we come over to our slides, we go through, we add in our additional test reference cords. We connect that together and we do our TRC verification. Now, ANSI TIA and ISO IEC require the use of reference grade connectors, hence the term test reference cords. So here, we are looking for less than or equal to 0.1 dB for multi-mode, 0.2 dB for single mode. By doing the TRC check, we ensure that these types of test reference cords are being used. Now, the CertiFiber Pro allows an extra 0.05 dB to take into account field conditions. So the numbers we're looking for here, for multi-mode, less than or equal to 0.15, single mode less than or equal to 0.25. These values are saved in memory. So if I come back here and I hit next, next, and home. If I go to results, we see that we've got all of these different test values. What we're looking for is right here. We're looking for a length of approximately 7 feet. We're looking for a loss of somewhere between 0.01. Rarely would we ever get it to 0. We're looking for a number between 0 and 0.15 for multi-mode. So we got that there. We look at this one, about 7 feet, and a loss of less than 0.15. If we saw a length of 0 here, it would tell me that somebody was doing something like a 2-jumper reference. That is not acceptable. So we're looking for a length of about 7 feet and something less than or equal to 0.15. So in this case, I have 2 TRC verifications that let me know I set reference properly. Because when we look at these other ones, okay, we're at 0.1 there, that's acceptable. 0.33 is not. as a person that looks at test results, I'm looking for those TRCs. Now we could go in and delete out the TRCs that failed. Those don't need to be in there, but we need to have at least 2 that show that we did it correctly. So that TRC value is saved into our results with a date and timestamp. Now what happens if that TRC value fails? Our measured loss will be pessimistic. We will be adding more loss to each one of our tests than we should. So we're fighting against ourselves. So continuing on, if those don't pass, is not beneficial to you. Now, you see, I do this, every class I do this. And every once in a while, we run into a situation like we just did where it doesn't work out right. I saw the negative 0.03. I went back and reset reference because negative values aren't acceptable. I couldn't get my less than or equal to 0.15. So I cleaned everything. So I changed out the bulkhead connector and I was able to get there. So these are the steps I go through. Do not give up on this and just keep going. Clean, test. If I changed out the bulkhead connector and still couldn't get it, it could be that there's something wrong with one of my test reference cords.